In the winter of 2006, my ex-girlfriend, Rebecca, disappeared from existence. All traces of her are gone, and I am the only one in the world that remembers her. This is our story. We first met during my freshman year of college. I was on Facebook, which at the time was exclusively for college students, and came across her profile. I was almost immediately attracted to her big green eyes and snake-bite lip piercings. After about an hour of chatting it up over the AOL Instant Messenger, we decided to hook up outside of my dormitory. I was incredibly nervous as I saw her through the glass doors in the lobby, and when she first looked at me, I could feel the proverbial butterflies in my stomach. As I approached, she gave me the biggest and brightest smile ever. "Hey there," I said shyly, scratching the back of my neck. "Hey," she giggled in response, pulling me into a strong and tight hug. I lost my breath for a moment as she squeezed me like a husband lost at sea that she'd finally been reunited with. My arms wrapped around her as well, and by the end of the day our hookup lived up to its name. When I got back to my dorm, the smile on my face told my roommate, Jim, exactly where I had been all day. Well, somebody had a good time," he said as he turned in his swivel desk chair to face me. "Sue, what's her name?" "Becca," I answered, staring up at the ceiling as I laid on my bed. Over the next couple of months, Becca and I dated, and it became obvious that I wasn't the only one with very little experience in the relationship department. She was extremely clingy and suffocating. At first, I found it charming, as I'd been very unlucky when it came to attracting the opposite sex, and before too long she became very difficult and uncomfortable to be around. One day, I'd finally had enough and had officially broken up with her, or at least I tried to. There was yelling and crying, so much so that I nearly went back on the idea of breaking up, just to get her to stop freaking out. I couldn't do it though, and I ended up just walking out of her house, much to her distress. I could still hear her screams and the sounds of objects being thrown as I walked away. I never looked back, but all of these years later I wonder if I should have made an attempt to work things out. Unbeknownst to me, that would be the final face-to-face conversation we'd ever have. Over the next couple of days, Becca blew my phone up with call after call. She'd call my dorm room phone at all hours of the night, much to Jim's annoyance. Finally, after some harsh persuasion from my roommate, I decided to answer one of her calls. The conversation was not civil. I said horrible things to her, things that made even Jim stare speechless, things that I won't repeat here. She didn't say anything after I was finished with my tirade. I could hear the muffled sounds of crying in the background. I immediately felt horrible, but before I could apologize she hung up on me. The atmosphere in the room was bittersweet. I was glad to finally be rid of her, but I felt terrible about how I accomplished it. Jim avoided eye contact with me, and I just stared at the floor. It's not how I intended for it to happen, but at least she was finally out of my life. A couple of months passed and winter break came. While most of the other students stayed at their parents' homes for the break, I had a falling out with my family, so I stayed with Jim at his house instead. His parents were pretty cool, and I got to really get to know Jim more than I had all year. I easily considered him my best friend, and while we grew closer as almost brothers, I was reminded of Becca, and the way our relationship ended. After hours of talking myself out of it, I eventually decided to look her up on Facebook, just to see how things were going for her. Surprisingly, however, after searching and searching I found nothing. Initially, I assumed she just deleted her account. I almost brushed it off and moved on with life, but something about it was bugging me. I hopped on MySpace to find her account on there, and again, nothing. Completely confused as to why she would delete both of her most used social media accounts, I decided to call her instead. I thought to myself that she must have taken our fallout harder than I thought, and I felt that I needed to make sure that she was okay. That's when things got weird. I tried to find her number in my cell phone's contact list, but she wasn't there. I didn't remember ever deleting her, but I initially figured that I must have and just forgotten about it. Luckily, I remembered her phone number, so I called her that way. Every attempt to call her was met with a message implying that the phone associated with the number was no longer in service. I was completely baffled. It was like she completely vanished from the face of the earth. I decided to talk to Jim about it. I figured this conversation would lead to frustration or pity, but in actuality, it was met with confusion. "Who's Becca?" was Jim's response. I was speechless. How the hell could he forget her? She spent days obsessively blowing up our dorm phone and making life miserable for both of us. "You know, my ex," I answered. "Short, piercings, completely crazy." "Bro, I didn't even know you were dating," he chuckled. "Why are you trying to get in touch if she was crazy though?" "Dude. Becca. We dated for months. I broke it off with her and she wouldn't back off. You know, called at 3 in the morning for days." Jim shrugged. "Bro, I don't know who or what you're talking about, but it sounds like you're better off. He had to be fucking with me. There was no way he forgot about her." "Don't be a dick," I said, getting annoyed. "You can't seriously sit there and say you don't remember her." "Don't call me a dick, he responded, sounding equally as annoyed. "I don't know who you're talking about." We talked for about an hour. I told him everything about her, from our first meeting to the look on his face when I verbally destroyed her over the phone. Even after all of that, he still denied ever knowing anyone named Rebecca. We sat there in silence for a bit, and I decided to try looking her up again. There was absolutely no trace of her anywhere. She was completely gone. A little under a year passed. Jim and I roomed together at an on-campus apartment for sophomore year. We had grown extremely close, and I considered him as a brother. One day, however, an old and forgotten part of our lives called my phone. The number was unknown, so I answered out of curiosity. To my absolute shock, I recognized the voice immediately as Becca. "Hell," she said in a whisper,